Hi everyone, welcome back to yet another video. Today we are joined by MCAT. He was feeling a little bit lonely, and so I let him into this. It's not really a studio, it's my office, so he could say hi and be in the video. And so today we're going to talk about thinking, negative thinking, catastrophic thinking, just extreme polarized ways of thinking. I'm familiar with all of these. I've struggled with all of these over the years, and it can really start to perpetuate our chronic pain and symptoms. And so today I'm going to give you 3 different ways that you can work with your thinking. So let's get into it. There's a number of different approaches out there in terms of working with your thinking, negative thinking patterns that we all experience, or cognitive traps that we all fall into. Whether this is cognitive therapies, somatic therapies, mindfulness, and in terms of my approach when I'm working with clients, I tend to use a mix of all of these. And so in this video, I'm just going to go through explaining 3 ways that you can work with your thinking that I have found really effective, even for myself personally. So let's get into this list. Number 1, thoughts are not facts. So often we get caught in this trap of believing every thought that we have. We think that it's so factual, but a lot of times our thoughts are not true. They're not based on fact in any way. In fact, I would go as far to say that probably 90% of the things that we think about are not actually based on fact. And this saying of thoughts are not facts, this is probably not the first time you've heard this, is really impactful. And it can be really empowering because it prevents us from actually just believing everything we think. So many of the worries and fear thoughts that I've had over the years have never actually been based on fact. There was probably a small amount of danger that was actually existing and a small likelihood that tragedy would hit. And most of the time it didn't actually take place. And so I always think about, in terms of this skill, really 2 questions that you can ask yourself. So the first one, if you're having negative thinking, just ask yourself, is this actually true? Is this based on facts? And so asking yourself this can be really helpful because a lot of times we're just so lost in our head that we don't even actually stand back and ask this question on if it's true or not. And I do this all the time when I'm actually lost in my fear thoughts. I'll ask, is this true? Is this factual? And a lot of times that's enough to potentially just break that pattern and separate it from me a little bit, for me to realize most of the stuff I'm actually, really lost in my mind is not true. It's not based on fact, and it's probably not going to happen. Now, the second question you can ask yourself around this is it helpful? Is what you're thinking about helpful for you? This may sound obvious, but a lot of times we don't realize. If we're lost in thinking about our pain, that's never helpful. Maybe for the first 5 minutes, but after that, it's no longer useful to us. And so even ask yourself this, after you've asked, is it true? Ask yourself, is this helpful to think about? Because that may be enough for you to try and redirect yourself. So often when we're lost in our minds, we think that it's the most important thing we need to be thinking about, whatever topic we're hyper-focused on or worried about. And so just simply ask yourself, is this helpful? Hey, buddy. How you doing? Okay. Number 2, our thoughts are often skewed based off the state of our body. This is the concept that I've talked about before of story follows state. Traditional therapies, what we were taught is that we think a certain way, and then as a result, we feel a certain way. But more research is showing, and some of the more progressive therapies out there understand that we actually feel a certain way, And then that story in our mind is created. And realizing this can actually be really empowering. I do believe this because it makes us understand that emotionally we might be feeling really charged. And as a result, that story is getting really skewed. But again, kind of to the first point I said in this video, that makes us understand that the thoughts that we're having are not actually true. And, this is a really useful thing to do. And one strategy that I use on myself to determine if my thoughts are actually skewed based off of how I'm emotionally feeling is asking myself, where does this land 0 to 10 in terms of danger? So, 0 would be absolutely no danger. Everything's completely fine. And 10 would be tragedy, like you've lost your whole career. A loved one's died. Like 10 is pretty extreme when we actually think about it. And so I know I've had work problems where I feel it at a 7 or an 8 out of 10. But actually, if I rate it honestly based on facts, it's maybe a 0 or a 1 out of 10. And it shows us this mind-body connection that because based on the state of my body, my thoughts are being skewed. And recognizing this can be really empowering as it takes the power away from our thoughts. You still here? You're hanging? Yeah, you're a good boy. You're a good boy. There you go. There you go. Okay, number 3. Don't resist. Instead, shift. What we resist persists. So if you try to resist negative thinking patterns or fear thoughts, what's going to happen is they're going to persist longer. So we need to be really careful about this. For years, I tried to resist thinking about certain things that were fear enticing, resist thinking about my worries, and that just resulted in more fear thoughts and more worries. It's, like I've said in the video before, it's like if I told you don't think of a pink elephant. All of you just thought of a pink elephant. So our mind just naturally causes things to persist the more we resist them. And so based off, point number 2 in this video, that the story actually follows the state, what we need to do instead of resisting our thoughts is we need to shift. We need to shift to our body, shift to a sensation there, and learn to attend to our internal state with care and compassion and by soothing it. And by doing that, naturally the story in our mind will become less skewed, and you'll notice your thoughts will probably even slow down. And this is a huge point, and it can take some practice. And, if being in your body feels really unsafe, we need to do this in small doses. And so if you're having negative thinking patterns going on, practice actually scanning your body, dropping in, noticing if there's some anxiety behind it, or there's some sadness, or there's some anger. This can be a really helpful skill to do. And by actually learning to attend to our internal state and care for it, and use some soothing touch or breathe with it and explore it, those thoughts will naturally slow down and become less skewed. This is like the number 1 skill that I'll use personally in terms of starting to reduce my worries or fear thoughts. And so I encourage you all to kind of play around with this, but again, it can take some exploring. So I hope this video on 3 ways to work with our thinking was helpful. Please put your questions or comments down below, hit the like button, and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you all next time. Happy healing.